This video is brought to you by NodePass, an additional 1 month for free. NodePass is a password manager. Its features include a data breach scanner, password health report, web vault, and a password inheritance option. You can use it for personal or business use. You can store all your passwords in one place. It has an autofill feature. It can generate secure passwords. You can also shop and browse faster whilst using the same account on up to 6 devices. There's a data breach scanner, a password health check, and finally, NodePass is a zero-knowledge password manager, which means no one else but you can see what's in your encrypted vault, not even the NodePass team. So go to nodepass.com/TruRedCrime or use code TruRedCrime for your additional free month. Link is in the description.
In every heart there is a room, a sanctuary safe and strong.
For over a year, her family divided and in mourning.
She has destroyed our family.
Until a new one comes along. I spoke with you in cautious tones. You answered me with no pretense, and still I feel I said too much.
Babysitters are there to help parents who require assistance in raising their children. I have a babysitter for my son, but today's story I'll tell you about the babysitter from hell. The dead body of 2-year-old Jada Justice was recovered from a swampy body of water near LaPorte, Indiana on June the 24th, 2009. Investigators at the time said Jada had been abducted inside a car. Her 18-year-old cousin, who was babysitting the girl, Engelica Castillo, told police she left her behind as she went into a convenience store. Police were called to search an area of western LaPorte County based on information they had received in relation to the missing girl. A coroner was called to the scene early after police found a body in the fields. Engelica Castillo said she left Jada in a car while she went to buy some milk at a gas station, and when she came back, Jada was gone. Jada's uncle, Mike Valdez, immediately sought the help of the community in searching for Jada. Missing person flyers were printed and distributed throughout the area. They described Jada as an African American toddler standing at 2 feet 2 inches tall, weighing around 35 pounds. She was last seen wearing an orange skirt and striped shirt. Since there was no evidence that an abduction had taken place, an Amber Alert could not be issued. Now, at the time of Jada's death, she was staying with her mother's cousin, Engelica Castillo, and Castillo's boyfriend, Timothy Kachik. So let's take a look at their relationship first. In the summer of 2006, Kachik was dealing cocaine and marijuana when he began dating Castillo. Around Christmas 2006, Castillo introduced Kachik to her family, including Melissa Swintek. Melissa is the mother of Jada and the cousin of Engelica. Castillo violated juvenile probation and went on the run with Kachik, moving between residences in Lake and Porter counties and eventually moving in with Swintek. Soon after he and Castillo moved in with Swintek, she learned that Kachik was dealing marijuana. Swintek told them not to keep large quantities in her house and told them to smoke outside. But she did accept marijuana from them, did smoke marijuana in her own house, and sometimes Swintek left her children with Castillo and Kachik. Castillo told investigators that Swintek was present when she and Kachik were bagging cocaine, and Castillo sold cocaine to an ex-boyfriend in front of Swiatek. After the couple moved into a trailer in Valparaiso, Swiatek continued to smoke marijuana with Kachik and Castillo and would bring her children to stay with them. Afterward, Kachik and Castillo moved into the basement of a home in Valparaiso where there was a large amount of traffic from drug sales. Swiatek would drop off her children there for Engelica and Tim to watch over. In the summer of 2008, Kachik and Castillo moved to a home in the 3900 block of Missouri Street, Hobart, where Kachik told police he bragged around the amount of money he was making from his drug dealing and showed Swiatek a large amount of cash. Kachik provided Swiatek with prescription painkillers, and she continued to tell Kachik and Castillo to be careful. In October of 2008, Kachik and Castillo arrived at Swiatek's home in Portage to take the children trick-or-treating, and Kachik told police he conducted a drug deal outside of Swiatek's home. In the year of 2008, Timothy and Engelica would watch Swiatek's children for around 3 times a week. Now, regarding the incident of Jada, according to the testimony of Castillo and of Kachik, Jada died on June the 13th, 2009, while riding in Kachik's vehicle or shortly thereafter. The exact cause of death was disputed at trial. Jada was scheduled to stay with Engelica from June the 8th through June the 21st of 2009. The first few days of the victim's visit were relatively remarkable. On the morning of June the 12th, Engelica and her boyfriend discovered that Jada had taken a packet of powdered Hawaiian punch mix and strawberries out of their refrigerator without asking for permission. So Engelica decided to yell at Jada and spank her. She then wrapped twine around the refrigerator so Jada could not open it. Which is stupid because kids taking juice out the fridge is a normal thing they do. Why would you spank her, you classless clown? Engelica's boyfriend, who was present during nearly all of the events in question, testified that the rest of the day was uneventful. The next morning, on June the 13th, Engelica discovered that Jada had locked herself in her bedroom. After unlocking the door, Engelica found Jada had made a mess on the bedroom floor with syrup and powdered Hawaiian punch packets Jada had found in the kitchen. Again, Engelica yelled and spanked Jada and then cleaned up the mess, pushing Jada aside roughly as she cleaned. Later in the day, around lunchtime, Engelica gave Jada a pre-packaged lunch to eat. Jada, who again was 2 years old, did not eat much of it, mostly playing with the food and throwing pieces of it to the dog. This made Engelica angry, and as punishment, Engelica put Jada in a corner in Jada's bedroom. And then after cleaning the mess in the kitchen, she sat on the couch with her boyfriend in the living room. Now while she's in the living room, Engelica can look in the bedroom, she can see Jada, and Jada was no longer on the bed itself, she was on the floor playing with her toys. Engelica then returned to the bedroom, spanked Jada, and attempted to force her to stand upright by yanking her and holding her upright by her arms. Obviously something inside Engelica's head just switched. Engelica then went back to the living room and again sat on the couch. Approximately 5 minutes later, Engelica again became irritated with Jada and returned to the bedroom. The facts are not clear as to what exactly occurred during this confrontation, but Engelica's boyfriend testified that he could hear Engelica speaking in an irritated tone to Jada when the door was closed, and that at one point when the door was open, he saw Engelica holding Jada by the hair, poking her in the body and slapping her. What a silly cow. At one point during this confrontation, Engelica brought the victim into the living room and with her boyfriend's help spanked Jada several times on her bare bottom using a belt. Approximately 1.5 hours after this confrontation began, Engelica came out of the victim's bedroom and told her boyfriend that Jada had hit her head on a table in the bedroom when she had slapped her. The boyfriend testified that Jada sustained a small cut above her right eye that bled only a small amount, that Engelica put a small bandage over it. He also testified that he noticed more red marks on Jada's face and that there were bruises on her buttocks at the time. Shortly after Jada hit her head, Engelica's boyfriend became frustrated by the ongoing confrontation between Jada and Engelica. He ran into Jada's bedroom and knuckled her in the head pretty hard, 4 to 6 times, hoping that everything would stop after that. You ran into the room and knuckled her? Coward. After Engelica continued to hold Jada by the hair, yanking and pushing her, and eventually tied her to a chair with her boyfriend's belts. She initially placed one belt around Jada's waist and another around her neck, but removed the belt from around the victim's neck after her boyfriend told her to do so. Still frustrated with the situation, Engelica's boyfriend then went to the gas station. When he arrived home, he heard boom, boom, boom coming from Jada's bedroom, but he couldn't see what was causing the noise because the bedroom door was shut. He then made plans to go to Chicago because he wanted to purchase heroin. Approximately 30 minutes later, Engelica and her boyfriend left for Chicago to retrieve the heroin. The boyfriend testified while they were getting Jada ready to leave, he noticed that Jada had a bruise in her face, that she seemed out of it, and that she was unable to hold her bottle while sitting in her car seat. Engelica wrapped Jada in a blanket to hide the marks on her body because they were going to take a friend with them to Chicago. Shortly after leaving the house, while driving on Interstate 94, the boyfriend noticed that Jada's head was leaning down towards her chest with her eyes closed. He then jumped to the back seat, realized she wasn't breathing, and attempted to administer CPR. At that point, Engelica and her boyfriend switched places, and Engelica continued CPR while her boyfriend drove the truck back to their house. Once they arrived home, they stopped administering CPR and left Jada in the back seat of the truck covered with a tarp. Sometime later, they set off for Chicago again without Jada. The precise timing of the victim's death is unclear, but both Engelica and her boyfriend testified that she was dead when they returned from Chicago later that night. During the arrest, a statement Tim reportedly gave to authorities, he said Engelica killed little Jada and two of them worked on a plan to dispose of her body, first lighting it on fire and then burying it in a barrel filled with concrete. During questioning, Engelica stuck with her original story, citing that she was at a gas station and someone took Jada from her car. Her boyfriend, however, offered a different version of events, and his information is what led authorities to her body in West LaPorte County. Tim described how Castillo and he had several lines of heroin before going to bed the night before Jada's death. The next morning, he said he found Engelica spanking Jada and pulling her hair. Later that evening, he realized Jada was not breathing. When they realized that Jada wasn't breathing, Engelica began screaming and crying. He says they then placed Jada's body in garbage bags. They tried to light her body on fire, but there was an explosion that burned him in the face and arms. They then put her body in a tub and filled it with concrete, and later came up with the story about Jada being abducted. It was clear that Engelica during questioning was under the influence of drugs. She had attempted to hit one of the investigators and had ominously said, "God is taking care of Jada, God is watching over her." Police also questioned why Engelica would take Jada with her to run errands instead of leaving her with her boyfriend, and couldn't understand why she had driven past several other convenience stores before stopping at that particular one. Neither of the medical experts who testified to the cause of death contended that Jada's death was caused by or could have been caused by the yelling, spanking, slapping, poking, shoving, pushing, or yanking of the body and hair inflicted by Engelica. The doctor who performed the autopsy testified that the sole cause of death was blunt force injuries of the head, with a depressed skull fracture being the primary injury. Engelica's medical expert testified that the cause of death was asphyxiation caused by unconsciousness, leading to an obstructed airway or some other interference with the child's breathing. Yet they could not conclude that any of Engelica's actions, yelling, spanking, slapping, poking, shoving, pushing, and yanking, would make a person aware, either in isolation or in the aggregate, of a high probability of death from blunt force injury of the head or asphyxiation. It doesn't matter, just don't do it. It's not hard. Just don't spank and shove the kid, you moron. The only injury to the victim caused by Engelica's actions was identified as a potential cause of Jada's death was the fact that the victim hit her head on a table after being slapped by the defendant. The autopsy doctor testified that falling on the distinct edge of an object could cause a blunt force head injury sufficient to have killed Jada in this case. They claimed there was no evidence, however, that Engelica intentionally or knowingly caused the victim to hit her head on the table. The evidence only suggested that the incident itself was an accident. The speculative connection between the slap and the victim striking her head on the table is not substantial evidence of probative value, proving that in administering such slap, Engelica should have been aware of a high probability of resulting death. Well, duh. Engelica's boyfriend, Timothy, admitted to abusing the victim on the day of her death, saying that he knuckled the victim in the head pretty hard, 47 times. 47 times? What? So if you take all this into consideration, it was said that the jury could reasonably have concluded that the boyfriend was aware of a high probability that punching a child in the head could take the child's life. So given all of this, the jury now thought, well, there's a high probability that Tom knew if I hit the kid this hard, maybe their life will be taken. The evidence most favorable to a conviction based on accomplice liability demonstrated that Engelica was present when her boyfriend hit the victim in the head, that she did not object to his actions, and that she continued to associate with him in an amicable manner after the incident. More importantly, Engelica attempted to conceal the victim's injuries in preparation for the trip to Chicago and failed to assist on or seek professional medical treatment for the victim at any time. Additionally, after the victim's death, Engelica assisted her boyfriend in disposing of the child's body and staged a fake abduction at a nearby gas station in an attempt to provide a cover story to explain Jada's disappearance. Now, the prosecution argued that the evidence showed that over the course of at least 5 hours, Castillo repeatedly beat the 2-year-old victim in some way, shape, or form. The evidence further showed that Castillo told her boyfriend that the victim hit her head on a table after Castillo slapped the victim. The prosecution argued that the likely cause of death to the victim was blunt force trauma to the head. They felt it was reasonable for the jury to infer that Castillo either was aware that her slapping the victim in close proximity to the table could easily result in the victim hitting their head on the table, or Castillo was lying when she stated it was an accident that the victim hit her head on the table. In other words, Engelica should have known the consequences of her actions. Furthermore, Castillo's boyfriend testified that after the table incident, there was another incident that involved Castillo and Jada in Jada's bedroom. Engelica Castillo was eventually convicted of murder, 2 counts of neglect of a dependent, battery, and false informing in connection with the death of Jada Justice. Castillo was convicted after a Lake Superior Court jury deliberated about 2 hours. On September the 8th, 2010, Engelica was sentenced to life in prison. As for Timothy, he took a plea deal and he was sentenced to 50 years. So now you may ask the question, okay, this is a tragic story, but where is Melissa, the mother of Jada? Well, Castillo and Jada's mother are cousins, as I mentioned, and over the years, the families leaned on each other for help with childcare. The families were together for holidays and birthdays. Melissa left the Lake County Courthouse after saying what's been on her mind for over a year, that this divided her family and it was in mourning. She destroyed my family, Melissa said. In court, Melissa spoke directly to Engelica. She said, I've lost so much. My kids have lost so much. My baby never had a chance at life. She was only 2. Well, Melissa, why'd you leave your baby with these people in the first place? And during the trial, Engelica made several outbursts during the sentencing hearing until the judge threatened to duct tape her mouth shut. But Castillo was eventually allowed to comment. Engelica said, I have to take responsibility for certain things in my life. Who is anybody to judge? Nobody is perfect. Melissa said, she has no conscience. She doesn't care. And I don't know where that came from or why that is, but it's the monster that got taken out on my daughter, and now we all see her for who she is, and I just wish I knew before what she was really like. Melissa went on to say, she got what she deserved. I hope that in time she can get a conscience and admit what she did. Castillo's defense attorneys argued that Castillo had been sexually abused as a child and had a violent childhood, but her past seemed to have little influence over the jury or judge. Maybe it was all the drugs. Finally, Engelica actually appealed her sentence, and the Indiana Supreme Court overturned the life sentence of Engelica Castillo. The state's highest court found that the life without parole sentence imposed in 2010 for Castillo was inappropriate given her role in the crime and that the prosecutor engaged in misconduct during closing arguments. So the court changed her sentence from life to 65 years, which to me is basically the same thing. Castillo's court-appointed attorney at the time said, "I am pleased that the Supreme Court agreed with both of the arguments I presented. The court issued a very well-reasoned and thoughtful opinion in a difficult case." His oral argument before the Supreme Court, he said he argued it was difficult to justify a life sentence for his client when the more culpable co-defendant would likely be serving 10 to 15 years. The court found that the facts of the case did not support Castillo's conviction for murder as a principal player, but only as an accomplice, in light of evidence that she slapped, poked, yanked the child by the arms and hair and spanked her. To be convicted of murder as the principal, the jury must find that the defendant knowingly or intentionally killed another person. I don't know if a life sentence is correct for this. I know 65 years sounds more than reasonable, so she may have got 10-15 years chalked off or whatever it is, but that bitch better served every day of the 65 years. Now, as for Jada's funeral, around 300 people packed into the Calvary Tabernacle Church of Griffith to pay their final respects to the little girl. Her father Clarence said that his daughter had provided 2 years of nothing but love, adding, "She gave me the strength to start loving again." Her mother Melissa said, "I'm glad a lot of people came and showed respect." Now, in a shocking twist, Melissa was also taken to court for neglect. The court argued, "Well, Melissa, unfortunately, your daughter is now gone. But you are culpable because why in the TruRed fuck of YouTube videos did you leave your children with these people in the first place? You should have known better. You have a responsibility. You let your children down." Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information on what happened in this court case. If you guys want to Google it, maybe put it in the comment section. Let me know. Did Melissa serve any time? Was she put on probation or anything? I don't know. But I agree with everything that happened in this case. Number one, both of them should spend the rest of their life in prison, but if they got sentenced to 50-60 years, more than adequate if you ask me. Melissa has a lot to answer for. How dare you leave your children for days on end with 2 drug addicts? You have a responsibility, or you had a responsibility to Jada, and you let her down. May the full force of the law be slapped right on your fat forehead. Thanks for watching.